Boop.
Hello! Welcome to Miss Smith's wonderful world of teaching. I don't know. A couple of you said that one of the most difficult parts of your job was dealing with different student behaviors, and I know that it takes time for you guys to be able to meet, especially during the school day. And so I wanted to create a couple of tips and tricks just for you guys to have in your back pocket of ideas that you can use to work with student behavior. My only ask is if you do want to use some of these, please reach out, let me know, so I can help you think through what are the specifics that will help this work well in your classroom. So over here, you'll see that I tried to ignore the homework. This is obviously this is not my classroom. So over here, I tried to come up with what are 3 things that are really important when you're responding to student behavior. Very first thing, make sure that you have clear expectations, clear consequences, and clear rewards for students. The second thing, Xavier, come here, please. Okay, thank you for, you're already giving me eye contact. So Xavier, what I know is true about you is you're incredibly intelligent. When I see you in class, I see you asking great questions. I see you involved in class, and that tells me that you are an incredibly intelligent young man. When I ask you to stop running and I see that you keep going after I've said that, that's not respectful, that's not who you are, okay? What do you think that it looks like for you to make a better choice? Stop running, that's it, just walk from class to class, okay? Thank you. Real quick. Thank you. So the way that I spoke to you, I was super respectful, right? I didn't raise my voice to you, I didn't talk back about you, I didn't talk bad to you. And it's really important you also show adults respect, so please show me respect as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So what you saw with that example with Xavier is what I like to call a heart-to-heart conversation. You might use these when you're giving warnings or reminders. Sometimes saying, hey, this is a warning, hey, this is a reminder, just isn't enough. And you need a little bit more of a conversation to really solidify that that behavior is a problem and you shouldn't see it again. It also communicates care and respect for the student. So breaking down that conversation, the very first thing that you want to do is ask the student to look at you. Be really careful though and watch your tone. You want to be like, look at me. It's like a, hey, look at me, right? You can still be firm, but you can be warm. Make sure you have their eye contact. Second thing is to name their strengths, name their best self, okay? Name specific times you've seen them do great things. Hey, I know that you're respectful in class, or I saw you pick up this trash on the ground. I know that you're curious. I saw you raising your hand in class. I saw you with your mom. I know that you're a great child. Whatever you can think of, name specific examples for them. From there, go ahead and name what behavior you saw that was a problem. You guys need to agree on the fact that the behavior happened and that it's not okay. Then name for them what it looks like to make a better choice. I think this is a great time to involve the student if they're in a time when they can own their actions and own the next step that they need to take. One thing that I didn't do or that you didn't hear from me in that conversation with Xavier is this one piece. Be clear about the next step if it continues. There are times when you need to draw a really firm line. And the way I like to think about this is if this happens again, then whatever. That's a promise you're making to a student, right? So if you promise them that next time this happens, it's going to be a send out, and you don't send it out, you broke a promise to them. Don't break promises to kids. Give them their consequence. And always command respect. If a student's talking about you underneath their breath, bring them back and restart that conversation again. Don't let them get away with saying rude things about you. It's not how we talk to adults, it's not how we talk to each other. Okay? So that's a heart-to-heart conversation. Okay, so you've had a heart-to-heart conversation. Sometimes students need a little bit more. So another idea that I have for you guys is called the Post-it note. Okay? It's pretty advanced. What you do is you take a Post-it note and you draw either a check or an X, a smiley face or a frown, whatever you would like to do. You can do Duke and Carolina to represent the good and the bad. And so all I do is this goes to kind of having feedback that's objective, consistent, and visible, okay? So the first thing you want to do is target a behavior. Let's say you have a student who's constantly calling out, and you talk to them and you're like, hey, we need to make sure that you're not calling out, you're raising your hand during class. Every time that you do the right thing and raise your hand, I'm going to give you a check. Anytime you call out, I'm going to give you an X. And you want to make sure that you finish class with more checks than X's. This isn't necessarily always tied to a reward. This is a way for you, the student to have visible feedback and for you to give them feedback on a clear expectation that you've set. What I do with this is maybe halfway through class, I will say, hey, let's take a look. You have 2 times as many checks as you have X's, okay? That means that you're doing twice as much good as you are not following directions. Keep up the good work, okay? You can also set goals. Your goals only have 3 X's today or whatever it is. Use this to your advantage. We can talk about how you want to use it, but the second idea is using a Post-it note to give kids clear, objective, consistent, and visible feedback on their behavior during class, okay? Now, these last 2 are kind of heavy duty, and what I'm going to say here is that before we think about using any kind of behavior tracker, you have to make sure you're following the Student U Behavior Management System. Regardless of who the student is, what their needs are, you have to follow that system. So before I work with you on creating any kind of behavior tracker, I'm going to ask you, have you been following through with your warnings, with your redirections? Have they been getting small groups? Have they gone to see Miss Malika or Miss April? Because they would be a part of this process as well. So if you come to me with a student and they're like, I haven't seen that student 1 time this summer, then before we even look at these trackers, we're going to go back and make sure you're following the system, okay? But we know with any system, it's not going to work for 5% of students. So if you're dealing with one of those 5%, here are 2 options that we can look into. The first one is a behavior tracker. Both of these also involve the parents. The parents have some information on a daily basis about how their student is doing. My example here is with a kid named Stay Kinbreath. So Stay Kinbreath. Okay, so the first thing you do is you set a goal with a student. So this student has a reminder to get nothing more than a goal to get nothing more than a reminder in each class. If the student meets their goal, the teacher signs and you can write a comment if you want. If the student does not meet their goal, you draw a line. You do not write anything negative on this sheet. Again, this is visible feedback for the student, and we want them to have visible feedback on when they're meeting their goals and they're doing well. Okay? This does not mean that they're absent from the Student U Behavior Management System. It's just a way for them to have visually through the day, so they can see how they're doing, and for their parents to have a record of how that's going as well. Okay? Behavior Tracker 2 is super intense. This is only for really cases we're really trying to figure out what we can do. This breaks down the student's behavior into 15-minute increments, okay? So every 15 minutes, if they're on task, they get a check. The way this works is if they get like all their checks, like up into snack or something, they have a reward. So if they get all their checks for their first 2 classes, maybe they get a 5-minute computer break. And then if they get all their checks for their second 2 classes, they can earn another computer break. The key for this type of tracker is number 3, following through with fidelity. You have to make sure you're setting up a plan that you can actually follow through with and do well. So that's just a little mini intro to like 4 different ways that you can use not only the Student U Behavior Management System, but also little tricks and tools for working with students. Remember that your expectations are always clear, that your feedback is objective, and you're following through well. If you have other thoughts or questions, just let me know. Thanks.